Hello, I hope you're doing well. Today we are going to discuss ultra-processed people. Why do we all eat stuff that isn't food? And why can't we stop by Chris Van Tulliken, an infectious diseases doctor and broadcaster. The book was published by Cornerstone Press, Penguin Random House, in 2023. This is an independent summary, and under no circumstances does it replace reading the original work. 1. The arms race in your gut. Let's get one thing straight immediately. You are not entirely human. You are a walking, talking ecosystem, a bag of flesh holding trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that are technically not you, but keep you alive. Chris Van Tulliken starts this whole mess by dragging us into his past life as a molecular virologist. He talks about the arms race between viruses and their hosts. It's a constant, brutal war where every evolved defense is met with a better weapon. This is nature, it's balance. But here is the problem. We have entered a new arms race, and this one isn't biological. It's financial. And guess what? You are the prey. The food industry isn't trying to kill you. That would be bad for business. They are trying to extract money from you. The best way to do that is to hack the biological systems that tell you when you're full, forcing you to buy more of their product. Van Tulliken argues that we have moved from a food environment shaped by the need for energy to one shaped by the flow of capital. The result is that we aren't eating food anymore. We are eating substances, constructed from novel molecules that our bodies have absolutely no idea how to handle. This isn't about you lacking willpower. It isn't about you being lazy. It's about you bringing a knife to a nuclear war against transnational corporations that have spent decades perfecting the science of overriding your biology. 2. Why your ice cream won't melt. Van Tulliken drops a hammer of an anecdote early on. He's in a park with his daughter, Lyra. She's 3. She's eating a tub of pistachio ice cream from a trendy brand called Hackney Gelato. It sounds artisanal, right? It sounds like something a bearded hipster churned by hand. But when Lyra wanders off to play, she hands him the tub. It's warm. It's been sitting in the blazing sun. It hasn't melted. Instead of a puddle of milk and cream, he's holding a warm, gelatinous foam. It's a zombie dessert. This is your wake-up call. Traditional ice cream is a delicate foam of ice crystals, fat globules, and air. It collapses when it gets warm because physics is real. But this stuff, it's engineered to survive. He checks the label. Locust bean gum, gar gum, carrageenan, mono and diglycerides of fatty acids. This is the toolkit of ultra-processed food, UPF. To understand why this matters, Van Tulliken introduces us to an insider named Paul Hart, a veteran of the food industry who speaks in rapid-fire truths. Hart explains that the industry doesn't use these chemicals to make food taste better. They use them to make food cheaper and easier to move. Real ingredients are a pain in the ass. Cream spoils, butter is expensive. Eggs vary in size, but modified starches and synthesized gums, though, they are consistent, they are dirt cheap, and they allow you to ship a product from a factory to a warehouse, freeze it, thaw it, shake it, and heat it without it losing its structure. The reason that ice cream doesn't melt isn't magic. It's because consumers like creaminess, not shards of ice, and supply chains like stability. The bacterial slime, xanthan gum, and the industrial pastes allow manufacturers to mimic the texture of luxury ingredients using the cheapest garbage available. This is the core principle of UPF. It is the alchemy of turning low-value crops, corn, soy, wheat, into high-value products by breaking them down into their molecular components and reassembling them with additives. 3. The invention of fake butter. If you think this is new, you're deluding yourself. The book takes us back to 1869 when Napoleon III offered a prize for a butter substitute. A French chemist named Mege Muriès invented oleomargarine by digesting cow fat with sheep stomach enzymes. It was gross, but it was a start. The real breakthrough came when we figured out how to hydrogenate plant oils. Suddenly, you didn't need a cow. You could take cotton seeds, which were literally garbage, a toxic byproduct of the cotton industry, and press them into oil. The oil was full of a toxin called gossypol and tasted like death. But if you refined, bleached, and deodorized it, the RBD process, you got a bland, gray sludge. Hydrogenate that sludge and boom, you have Crisco. This is the birth of the food you eat today. It was the first time humans mass consumed a substance that had no historical precedent in our evolution. We took a waste product, sanitized it with industrial chemicals, and sold it as a technological marvel. Hart, the insider, explains that today's fats, stearin, shea fat, mango kernel fat, are all interchangeable. The manufacturers don't care which one they use. They care about the spot price on the commodities market. If palm oil gets expensive because of a war or a drought, they switch to something else. The label might change, but the sludge remains the same. You are eating global economics, not ingredients. 4. The Nova Revolution. For decades, we have been obsessed with nutritionism, the idea that food is just a delivery vehicle for nutrients. We look at labels and count protein, salt, sugar, and fat. We think if we get the numbers right, we'll be healthy. Van Tulleken argues that this is a fatal error. A bowl of homemade chicken soup and a can of industrial chicken sludge might have the same nutrients on paper, same calories, same salt, same protein. But your body treats them completely differently. Enter Carlos Monteiro, a Brazilian scientist who realized that the obesity crisis in Brazil wasn't matching the data. People were actually buying less sugar and oil for home cooking, yet they were getting fatter. Why? Because they weren't cooking anymore. They were buying prepackaged garbage. Monteiro proposed the NOVA classification, which divides food into 4 groups. 1. Unprocessed, minimally processed. An apple, a steak, a grain of rice. 2. Processed culinary ingredients. Oil, butter, sugar, salt. Stuff you use to cook, group 1. 3. Processed food. Fresh bread, cheese, cured meats. Mixtures of group 1 and 2. 4. Ultra-processed food. This is the monster. Formulations of ingredients, mostly of exclusive industrial use, made by a series of industrial processes. The definition of UPF is essentially, if it's wrapped in plastic and contains at least one ingredient you wouldn't find in a normal kitchen, invert sugar, hydrolyzed protein, soy lecithin, maltodextrin, it's UPF. The purpose of group 4 is not to nourish you. Its purpose is to replace all other food groups. It is designed to be hyperpalatable, convenient, and insanely profitable. It is designed to be overconsumed. 5. The experiment, becoming the lab rat. Van Tulleken isn't just lecturing, he's participating. He sets up an experiment with colleagues at University College London. For 1 month, he will eat a diet consisting of 80% UPF. This sounds extreme, but here is the punchline. This is the normal diet for 1 in 5 people in the UK and the USA. For teenagers, it's even higher. He is simply adopting the standard diet of the modern human. He starts his day with Cocoa Pops. He watches his daughter, Lyra, eat them. He describes it as a trance. The first spoonful is ecstatic, the crunch, the sugar hit. But by the 3rd spoonful, it's just a brown sludge. Yet she keeps eating. She eats until her belly is drum tight. She isn't enjoying it anymore. She is mechanically complying with the chemical signals the food is sending to her brain. He realizes that the traffic light system on the box, green for fat, amber for sugar, is a joke. It's nutritionism acting as a smokescreen. The cereal is 0.65% salt. That's saltier than some seawater, saltier than a microwave lasagna. But you don't taste the salt because it's masked by the sugar, and the sugar is masked by the flavorings. It's a sensory trick designed to bypass the stop signal that your body would normally send when it's had enough salt or sugar. Mope 6. The failure of carbs versus fats. We have spent the last 30 years arguing about whether fat makes you fat or sugar makes you fat. We had the Atkins craze, then the keto craze. We had Gary Taubes telling us insulin is the enemy. We had the government telling us to cut saturated fats. Van Tulleken argues that this entire debate is a distraction. He points to the work of Kevin Hall, a physicist turned nutrition researcher at the NIH. Hall ran a rigorous study where he locked people in a ward and fed them 2 diets, one ultra-processed, one unprocessed. Crucially, the diets were matched for nutrients. Same sugar, same fat, same salt, same fiber. If nutritionism were true, the subjects should have eaten the same amount. They didn't. When people were on the UPF diet, they ate, on average, 500 calories more per day. They gained weight rapidly. When they switched to the unprocessed diet, they lost weight, even though they could eat as much as they wanted. This is the smoking gun. It's not the sugar, it's not the fat, it's the processing. The industrial formulation breaks the link between the gut and the brain. You can consume 3,000 calories of UPF and still feel hungry because your body hasn't registered that it has been fed. 7. The cost of illusion. Let's talk about money again, because that's what drives the bus. The book highlights that in the UK, the poorest 50% of households would need to spend almost 30% of their disposable income to eat a healthy diet defined by government guidelines. For the poorest 10%, it would cost 75% of their income. UPF is the only option for millions of people. It is cheap because it relies on subsidized crops, corn, soy, and industrial chemistry rather than fresh produce. It has a shelf life of forever, reducing waste for retailers. Van Tulleken destroys the myth that obesity is a failure of personal responsibility. He looks at the data from Christopher Snowdon, a libertarian commentator who argues that since calorie consumption has technically dropped since the 1970s, we must just be lazy. Van Tulleken digs into the doubly labeled water data, the gold standard for measuring energy expenditure, and finds the truth. We aren't moving less. Our metabolism hasn't collapsed. The self-reported calorie data is just wrong because people lie or forget about what they eat, especially when what they eat is designed to be forgotten. We are eating more, but we don't realize it because the food slides down our throats without chewing, without smelling, without sensing. It is pre-chewed by machines before it even enters your mouth. 8. The setup for disaster. As Van Tulleken begins his 80% UPF diet, he notes that his body composition is average. He's 82 kilograms, 17% body fat. He feels fine, but he knows what's coming. He's about to expose his system to a month of industrial bombardment. He warns us, this isn't a weight loss book. He doesn't care if you're fat. He cares that you are being lied to. He cares that you're being treated as a waste disposal unit for industrial byproducts. He suggests that if you want to quit UPF, you shouldn't do it yet. Keep eating it while you read the book. Let the knowledge of what that emulsifier is doing to your gut lining marinate in your mind while you chew your sandwich. The brilliance of this first section is how it strips away the comfort of ignorance. You can no longer look at a tub of margarine or a box of cereal as food. You see it as a chemical output of a coal mining byproduct, paraffin to fatty acids, or a starch modification lab. You see the history of manufacturers desperately trying to turn waste into gold. Mej Muriès didn't want to make butter. He wanted to win a prize. P&G didn't want to feed the world. They wanted to sell cottonseed oil. The entire edifice of modern nutrition is built on the foundation of turning industrial waste into edible product. And you're just the filter it passes through on its way to the sewer, leaving a deposit of visceral fat and inflammation as a toll fee. 1. The Brazilian paradox. Let's go down to Brazil. It's the early 2000s. The country is getting richer, which usually means people stop dying of hunger and start dying of heart attacks. But something weird is happening. Carlos Monteiro, a public health researcher, is looking at the data and scratching his head. He sees that obesity is skyrocketing. Logic dictates that people must be shoveling more sugar and oil into their faces, right? Wrong. The data shows that household purchases of sugar, oil, and flour are crashing. Brazilians are buying less of the raw materials used to make food. So how are they getting fatter while buying less sugar? Monteiro realizes the mistake everyone else was making. They were looking at ingredients, not products. People weren't buying bags of sugar to bake cakes. They were buying chocoballs and frozen lasagna that were already loaded with sugar. They had outsourced their eating to corporations. This is the Brazilian paradox. It destroyed the old way of thinking about nutrition. It proved that you can't just look at a nutrient profile, fat, sugar, salt, and understand health. You have to look at the purpose of the processing. If I cook a steak with butter, I am processing it to make it tasty. That's fine. If Nestlé takes a slurry of soy protein, adds modified starch, caramel color, and beef flavoring to create a steak-like slab, they aren't cooking. They are engineering a commodity. The purpose of the first is nourishment. The purpose of the second is profit maximization through the destruction of the food matrix. 2. The matrix is everything. Here is a truth that will ruin your smoothies. Texture is a nutrient. Van Tulleken hammers this point home. Food isn't just a bag of chemicals, it's a physical structure. He calls it the food matrix. Think of an apple. It has sugar, sure, but that sugar is trapped inside a complex scaffold of fiber cells. To get it, your teeth have to grind, your stomach has to churn, and your enzymes have to work overtime to break down those cell walls. This takes time. It releases the sugar slowly into your blood. Your gut hormones have time to wake up and scream, "Hey, we're eating, stop!" Now, take that apple and obliterate it into juice. Same sugar, same vitamins. But the matrix is gone. You drink it in 10 seconds. The sugar hits your liver like a tsunami. Your gut hormones are still asleep. You don't feel full, so you drink another one. A PF is, by definition, food where the matrix has been destroyed. It is pre-chewed by giant industrial steel jaws before it ever touches your lips. The industry does this on purpose. Chewing is work. Work slows down consumption. If you want to sell more product, you need to remove the friction of chewing. You want food that melts in the mouth, what scientists call vanishing caloric density. It fools your brain into thinking you're eating air, even as you swallow 500 calories of cheesy puffs. You are essentially mainlining energy, bypassing every evolutionary brake pedal you possess. Number 3, Nazi butter and the coal eaters. If you want to see the logical endpoint of PF, look at the Nazis. In Chapter 4, Van Tulleken tells the absolutely bonkers story of coal butter. In the 1930s and 40s, Germany was desperate for fat. They had coal, but they couldn't eat coal. Or could they? A chemist named Arthur Imhausen figured out that you could take paraffin wax, a byproduct of coal processing, oxidize it into fatty acids, and mix it with glycerine to create a synthetic fat. They called it Kunstspeisefett. It was white, tasteless, and technically edible. They tested it on prisoners. It kept them alive. It provided calories, so the Nazis started manufacturing it. This is the ultimate red pill moment. It proves that just because something is made of the correct molecules, fatty acids, it doesn't make it food. Food is information. It connects us to the soil, the sun, and the seasons. Coal butter is just chemical energy severed from the biological loop. Today's UPF isn't made from coal, mostly, but the philosophy is identical. It's about synthesizing the cheapest possible calorie source into a shape that humans will tolerate. Whether you derive the fatty acids from palm oil or paraffin is an economic detail, not a moral one, to the industry. You aren't eating food, you are eating an industrial output that has been chemically bullied into mimicking food. 4. The 3 ages of eating. Van Tulleken zooms out, way out. He breaks down human history into 3 ages of eating to show just how freakish our current situation is. The first age, we were apes. We ate raw stuff, leaves, fruit, the occasional monkey. To survive on this, we needed massive guts to ferment all that fiber. We spent all day chewing. We were dumb because all our energy went to our stomachs. The second age, processing. We discovered fire and chopping. This was the game changer. By cooking meat and tubers, we externalized our digestion. We did the hard work of breaking down food outside our bodies. This allowed our guts to shrink and our brains to explode in size. Processing is good. It made us human. It gave us the calories to build civilizations. The third age, ultra-processing. This started about 50 years ago. We didn't just externalize digestion, we externalized appetite control. We handed over the selection, preparation, and flavoring of our food to algorithms and shareholders. The problem is that our bodies are stuck in the second age. We are evolved to eat cooked whole foods. When we enter the third age, our biology panics. We have no defense mechanisms against food that is pre-digested, hyper-flavored, and available 24/7. We are Stone Age biology living in a Space Age food swamp. 5. The lie of calorie counting. You've been told that a calorie is a calorie. If you eat 2,000 calories of broccoli or 2,000 calories of Doritos, the effect on your weight is the same. Van Tulleken calls BS on this. He dives into the science of digestibility. Remember the food matrix. It turns out that when you eat whole nuts, you poop out about 30% of the fat. It's locked in the fiber. Your body never absorbs it. The label says 100 calories, but you only get 70. When you eat peanut butter, processed, you absorb more. When you eat the oil extracted from the nut, ultra-processed, you absorb everything. UPF is designed to have near 100% bioavailability. You absorb every single calorie because the machine has already done the work for you. So even if you strictly count calories, you will gain more weight on a UPF diet because you are harvesting more energy from the same amount of food. The calorie in, calorie out model is technically true in a physics lab, but it is useless in a human body because UPF changes the calorie outside of the equation. It lowers your metabolic rate. It reduces the energy you spend on digestion, thermic effect of food. You are fighting a rigged game. The label lies, the food lies, and your body is left holding the bag. 6. The incretin effect. Why can you drink a liter of Coke but not eat 5 apples? They have the same sugar. It's the incretin effect. When you eat real food, it travels down your gut and stimulates cells to release hormones like GLP-1 and PYY. These tell your pancreas to pump insulin and your brain to stop eating. But these sensors are located deep in the gut. UPF is absorbed so fast in the upper small intestine that it often doesn't even reach the sensors that trigger satiety. It's ghost food. It enters your blood, spikes your sugar, and gets stored as fat before your brain even knows you've had lunch. This explains the zombie-like eating behavior Van Tulleken observed in himself and his daughter. You are physically full but hormonally starving. Your stomach is stretched, but your satiety signal is dead silent. So you reach for another slice of pizza. It's not gluttony. It's a communication breakdown caused by speed. UPF is simply too fast for your biology to track. 1. It's not about sugar, or why sugar is a scapegoat. We love a villain. For years, we decided sugar was the devil. We taxed it, we shamed it, we replaced it with sweeteners. And guess what? We got fatter. Van Tulleken devotes a significant chunk of the book to dismantling the single nutrient theory. He argues that obsessing over sugar is a trap set by the food industry. Why? Because if the problem is sugar, the solution is reformulation. If you tell Nestlé that sugar is bad, they say, no problem. They take out the sugar and replace it with stevia, maltodextrin, or artificial sweeteners. The product is still a hyper-processed slab of garbage, but now it says low sugar on the box, so you think it's healthy. You buy more. This is the genius of the industry. They love nutrient targets because they can engineering their way around them. They can't engineer their way out of a whole food requirement. Van Tulleken points out that hunter-gatherer tribes like the Hadza eat insane amounts of honey, basically pure sugar, and they don't get diabetes. They don't get obese. Why? Because the honey is part of a whole diet, eaten seasonally with fiber and without the cocktail of emulsifiers and industrial fats found in a candy bar. Sugar is a problem, yes, but it is a symptom of UPF, not the root cause. Focusing on it allows the industry to keep selling you the same toxic sludge, just with a different sweetener. 2. The exercise myth. Here is a hard pill to swallow. You cannot run off a bad diet. Van Tulleken introduces us to the constrained energy expenditure hypothesis, championed by Herman Poncer. Poncer went to live with the Hadza people in Tanzania. These guys are active all day. They hunt, they dig, they climb. You'd expect them to burn 5,000 calories a day. The data shocked everyone. The Hadza burn the same amount of calories as a lazy office worker in London. How in? Because the body is stingy. If you exercise a lot, your body doesn't just burn extra calories forever. It adapts. It shuts down other systems to save energy. It lowers your immune system, turns down your reproductive hormones, and reduces your background inflammation. It caps your total burn. This means that the energy balance equation preached by Coca-Cola, just move more, is a lie. You can spend an hour on the treadmill, and your body will just claw back those calories by making you lethargic for the rest of the day, or by dialing down your metabolism. Exercise is crucial for health. It keeps you happy, strong, and alive. But for weight loss, it's nearly useless. The industry pushes the exercise narrative because it shifts the blame onto you. If you're fat, it's not because their soda is poison. It's because you didn't jog enough. It is the ultimate gaslighting. 3. Willpower is a fairy tale. By now, Van Tulleken is deep into his self-experiment. He's gained weight, he's grumpy, he's constipated, and he finds he cannot stop eating. He talks about the concept of food addiction. For a long time, scientists laughed at this. You can be addicted to heroin, sure, but food matter. You need food to live, but the data is changing. Van Tulleken interviews Ashley Gearhart, who developed the Yale Food Addiction Scale. She shows that UPF triggers the same reward pathways in the brain as nicotine or cocaine. When you eat UPF, you get a dopamine hit. But unlike real food, which signals satiety eventually, UPF is designed to never let you peak. It's the bliss point. It keeps you in a state of wanting without liking. You don't even enjoy the 10th cookie, but you are compelled to eat it. This destroys the idea of willpower. Willpower is a finite resource in the frontal cortex. UPF hacks the primitive brain, the striatum, that overrides the cortex. Asking someone to resist UPF with willpower is like asking someone to hold their breath for an hour. It's a physiological impossibility. The industry knows this. They hire craveability experts to maximize this effect. They design the mouthfeel to be perfectly unsatiating. They are drug dealers in chef's hats. 4. Hacking the brain, the vagus nerve. Let's get technical. How does the gut talk to the brain through the vagus nerve? It's the superhighway of information connecting your stomach to your head. When you eat real food, say a steak and broccoli, your gut sends complex signals up the vagus nerve. Protein here, fiber here, nutrients detected. Okay, we're good. UPF sends noise. It sends a blast of calories but no nutrient information. It confuses the vagus nerve. Van Tulleken explains that this disruption leads to nutritional agnosia. Your body doesn't know what it has eaten. Worse, UPF causes inflammation in the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that regulates weight. In rodent studies, a UPF diet physically damages the brain's ability to sense leptin, the I'm full hormone. So, the more UPF you eat, the more you damage the very system that is supposed to stop you from eating. It is a positive feedback loop of destruction. You are literally brain damaged by your breakfast cereal. 5. The flavor illusion. Why does strawberry yogurt taste like strawberry? It's not because of strawberries, it's because of ethyl methylphenylglycidate. In part 3 of the book, Van Tulleken explores the world of flavorings. He explains that in nature, flavor is a promise of nutrition. Sweetness means energy, fruit. Savory, umami, means protein. Bitterness means toxin. We evolved to follow these maps. UPF is a lie. It decouples flavor from nutrition. You can make a ball of starch taste like a taco, a cherry, or a smoked ham. This is the Dorito effect, a term coined by Mark Schatzker, whom he references. When you eat a UPF strawberry, your tongue tastes fruit, and your brain prepares for vitamin C and antioxidants. But the gut receives only starch and sugar. The prediction error drives anxiety in the body. The brain says, wait, where is the nutrition I was promised? So it tells you to keep eating. It thinks you must have made a mistake. Maybe the nutrition is in the next bite. It never is. This constant deception is a key driver of overconsumption. We are eating ghosts of food, chasing a nutritional payload that never arrives. 6. The additive anxiety. It's not just about what is missing, nutrients, it's about what is added. Van Tulleken dives into the murky world of emulsifiers, specifically carboxymethylcellulose, CMC, and polysorbate 80. These are detergents. They are used to mix oil and water. They are in your ice cream, your toothpaste, and your salad dressing. In your gut, they do exactly what they do in the sink. They strip away the mucus layer that protects your intestinal wall. Your gut wall is lined with a thick layer of mucus to keep the trillions of bacteria away from your immune cells. Emulsifiers dissolve this barrier. The bacteria invade the demilitarized zone. Your immune system freaks out and attacks. The result, chronic low-grade inflammation. This inflammation is linked to everything: metabolic syndrome, depression, anxiety, and even cancer. He cites a study by Benoit Chassaing, who showed that mice-fed emulsifiers developed inflammatory bowel disease and metabolic syndrome. The industry says, it's just mice. But the mechanism is biologically plausible in humans. We are scrubbing our insides with soap every day, and we wonder why everyone has IBS. 7. The pre-chewed reality. We need to talk about chewing again because it turns out your jaw is an evolutionary masterpiece that we have decided to retire. Van Tulleken explains that chewing is the first stage of digestion, but it is also the first stage of satiety. The act of mastication sends signals to the brain. It takes time. It creates orosensory exposure. UPF is soft. It is pre-chewed. In the factory, machines grind, extrude, and blast the ingredients until they are effectively pre-digested. When you eat a burger bun from a fast food chain, you don't chew it. You mash it against the roof of your mouth and swallow. It offers zero resistance. This matters because of eating rate. Studies show that people eat UPF at a rate of about 50 to 70 grams per minute. Real food, maybe 30 grams per minute. You are physically capable of inhaling 1,000 calories of UPF in 5 minutes. To get 1,000 calories from boiled potatoes and steak, you would be eating for 20 minutes. By minute 15, your hormones would stop you. With UPF, you are done before the start gun has even fired. This softness also affects jaw development in children. Van Tulleken notes that our jaws are shrinking because we don't stress the bone anymore. This leads to crowded teeth and sleep apnea. We are literally de-evolving our own faces for the sake of convenience. 2. The smell of deception. Have you ever opened a bag of chips and been hit by a wall of smell? That's not the chips. That is a top-note aroma sprayed onto the product just before sealing. Van Tulleken visits flavor houses or reads about them. They are notoriously secretive. To explain how UPF smells, real food smells because it is releasing volatile organic compounds. A strawberry smells like a strawberry because it is ripening. UPF smells like nothing. The base product, the starch sludge, is odorless or smells like cardboard. The smell is added later. But here is the kicker. The smell is engineered to be intense initially and then vanish. This is called vanishing flavor density. If a flavor is too strong and lasts too long, you get bored of it. This is sensory-specific satiety. The industry figured out that if they make the flavor hit hard and then disappear, you never get bored. You get a spike of yum and then nothing. So you take another bite to get the hit again. You are chasing the dragon of the first bite for the entire bag. 3. The dysregulatory body. By the middle of his experiment, Van Tulleken is falling apart. He has gained significant weight. He is sluggish. His libido is dead. He is anxious. He describes a feeling of being dysregulated. His body, which used to tell him when to sleep, when to eat, and when to move, has gone silent. He is operating on manual control, and manual control is exhausting. He links this to the immune system. The gut is the largest immune organ in the body. When you feed it emulsifiers, sweeteners, and modified starches, you are triggering a constant alarm state. This inflammation travels. It affects the brain. There is a growing body of evidence linking high UPF consumption to depression and anxiety. The mechanism is likely inflammation-driven. Your brain thinks you are sick because your gut is inflamed, so it initiates sickness behavior, withdrawal, lethargy, sadness. You aren't depressed because you are fat. You are depressed and fat because you are inflamed. 4. The destruction of traditional diets. The book takes a somber turn as Van Tulleken looks at the global impact. UPF is not just a Western problem. It is the primary export of Western capitalism. He discusses the nutrition transition. This is what happens when a developing country opens its markets to big food. In the space of a single generation, populations go from being underweight to being obese, often skipping healthy entirely. He uses the example of Nestlé in Brazil and other places. They hire door-to-door saleswomen to go into favelas and sell formula, biscuits, and fortified dairy drinks. They market these products as modern and scientific. Traditional diets, beans, rice, vegetables, are branded as backward or peasant food. UPF is aspirational. It means you have arrived. This cultural erasure is catastrophic. Traditional diets were evolved over thousands of years to suit the local environment and genetics. UPF is a one-size-fits-all bomb. When it lands in populations that have had no historical exposure to high-calorie diets, like Pacific Islanders or indigenous populations, the results are devastating. Diabetes rates of 40 to 50%, amputations, blindness. It is a form of culinary colonialism. We aren't just exporting goods, we are exporting a disease model. 5. The true cost of Pringles. Van Tulleken asks, why is a tube of Pringles cheaper than a bag of apples? It makes no sense. Apples just grow on trees. Pringles require mining for fuel, fertilizer, in industrial farming, transport, refining, modification, molding, frying, seasoning, and packaging in a complex tube. The answer is externalities. The price of the Pringles does not include the cost of the environmental damage caused by the palm oil plantations. It doesn't include the cost of the healthcare for the diabetes it causes. It doesn't include the cost of the water pollution from the fertilizer runoff. If you factored in the true cost of UPF, the cost to the planet and the taxpayer, a Big Mac would cost $20. We are subsidizing our own destruction. Governments use tax money to subsidize corn and soy, which makes the raw ingredients of UPF artificially cheap. Then they use tax money to treat the sick people who eat it. The corporations sit in the middle, collecting the profit from both sides. This economic analysis is crucial. It moves the debate from personal choice to rigged system. You aren't choosing the Pringles because you prefer them. You are choosing them because the entire global economy is structured to make them the path of least resistance. Number 6, the fortification scam. One of the biggest defenses of UPF is fortification. The industry says, look, our cereal has 100% of your daily vitamin D. Van Tulleken exposes this as a marketing gimmick. First, adding synthetic vitamins to a pile of sugar doesn't make it healthy. It's like putting a bandage on a bullet wound. Second, the absorption of these vitamins is questionable without the food matrix. Third, and most importantly, it allows the industry to make health claims on junk. High in iron on a chocolate bar distracts from the fact that it is 40% sugar. This is the health halo effect. In developing countries, this is even more insidious. Companies claim their sugary drinks fight malnutrition. They use the very problem they are causing, poor diet, as a justification for selling more processed solutions. Kids aren't getting enough nutrients. Buy our fortified powdered milk instead of, eating real food. It is the ultimate cynical play. Break the food system, then sell the repair kit. 7, the plastic connection. It's not just the food, it's the wrapper. UPF and plastic are twins. You cannot have one without the other. To keep UPF fresh for 2 years, it needs to be sealed in complex multi-layered plastics, which are often impossible to recycle. But the connection goes deeper. Van Tulleken notes that phthalates and bisphenols, chemicals in plastic, can leach into the food. These are endocrine disruptors. They mess with your hormones, so you are eating food that disrupts your hormones, wrapped in plastic that disrupts your hormones. It is a double whammy of chemical interference. Furthermore, the very existence of UPF drives the plastic pollution crisis. If we ate real food, we would have compostable waste, peels, cores. With UPF, we have non-biodegradable trash. The mountains of garbage in the global south are largely composed of sachets and wrappers from Western food giants. Eating UPF is an environmental act. It is a vote for the petrochemical industry. 1. The first 1,000 days. Hooked from birth. If you think this starts when a kid buys their first candy bar, you're wrong. It starts in the womb. Van Tulleken explores the concept of the first 1,000 days, from conception to age 2. This is when the metabolic software is written. If a mother eats a high UPF diet during pregnancy, the fetus is bathed in glucose and inflammatory markers. The baby is born pre-programmed for a high-calorie environment. But the real crime happens after birth. Formula milk. Now, Van Tulleken is very careful here. He is not anti-formula. Formula saves lives. For women who cannot or choose not to breastfeed, it is a miracle. But he attacks the marketing of formula. Commercial baby formula is the original ultra-processed food. It is cow's milk or soy torn apart and reassembled with vegetable oils, sugars, and emulsifiers. The industry spends billions convincing mothers that formula is science and breast milk is uncertain. They add ingredients like HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides, to formula and claim it's closer to breast milk. But these are synthetic analogs. The tragedy is that breast milk is the ultimate whole food. It changes flavor depending on what the mother eats, teaching the baby about the local diet. Formula always tastes the same, vanilla sweet. We are raising a generation of children who, from their very first drop of milk, are trained to expect a uniform, hypersweet industrial flavor profile. We are colonizing their palates before they can even speak. 2. The baby food aisle is a trap move to the toddler aisle. Pouches. You've seen them. Squeezable plastic bags of puree, organic kale and apple. Parents love them. They are clean, convenient, and say kale on the front. Van Tulleken reveals the scam. These pouches are pasteurized to death. They are essentially boiled jam. The kale is often a tiny percentage masked by massive amounts of concentrated apple or pear juice, sugar. But the worst part is the delivery mechanism. Sucking a sweet paste from a plastic nipple bypasses the development of chewing. It bypasses the sensory experience of touching, smelling, and seeing food. Kids who grow up on pouches develop texture aversion. They freak out when they see a real piece of broccoli because it's lumpy and bitter. They have been trained to expect smooth, sweet sludge. This is the on-ramp to the UPF highway. The industry hooks them on pouches, then transitions them to toddler snacks, puffs, shapes, then to sugary cereals, and finally to fast food. It is a seamless pipeline of brand loyalty built on sensory stuntedness. 3. The healthy UPF. By now, you might be thinking, okay, I'll just buy the vegan, gluten-free, high-protein bar. Stop. That's UPF too. Van Tulleken takes a sledgehammer to the wellness industry. He points out that a protein bar is often nutritionally identical to a Snickers, just with soy protein isolate instead of peanuts and maltitol instead of sugar. The processing is the same. The binders are the same. The lack of matrix is the same. In fact, these products are often worse because they carry a health halo. You eat 2 of them because you think you're being virtuous. You ignore the bloating and gas caused by the fake fibers and polyols because you think it's detoxing. This is where the definition of UPF becomes a superpower. It cuts through the marketing bullshit. Is it wrapped in plastic? Classic. Does it have weird ingredients? Then it's junk, whether it says keto, paleo, or plant-based on the label. The plant-based meat alternatives get a special mention. While better for the planet, maybe, a burger made of pea protein isolate, coconut oil, and methylcellulose is still an ultra-processed puck. It is not a vegetable. It is a chemical simulation of meat. 4. The evidence base. Why we know it's bad. Critics, usually funded by the industry, say correlation is not causation. Maybe people who eat UPF are just poor, stressed, lazy. Van Tulleken addresses this head-on. He outlines the Bradford Hill criteria for causation. 1. Strength of association. The link between UPF and disease is massive. It's not a tiny blip. 2. Consistency. Every study in every country shows the same thing. 3. Dose response. The more you eat, the sicker you get. 4. Plausibility. We have biological mechanisms, inflammation, incretin effect, microbiome damage that explain why it happens. 5. Experiment. We have clinical trials, like Kevin Hall's, that prove it causes overeating. The evidence is overwhelming. We are at the point where denying the harm of UPF is like denying climate change or the link between smoking and cancer. It is intellectually dishonest. The only reason there is debate is because the industry creates it. They fund studies designed to fail. They flood the journals with noise. They pay experts to say, we need more research while the bodies pile up. 6. The regulatory capture. Why doesn't the government stop this? Because the government is the industry. Van Tulleken exposes the revolving door between food regulators and food corporations. In the UK and US, the panels that write the dietary guidelines are stacked with people who take money from Nestlé, Coca-Cola, and Unilever. He gives examples of Public Health England, now disbanded, partnering with pizza companies and candy manufacturers to fight obesity. It's like the fire department partnering with arsonists. They focus on labeling and education because these things don't work. They know they don't work. Putting a calorie count on a menu does not change behavior. It just allows the government to say, we did something, while protecting corporate profits. Real solutions, taxes, bans on advertising, bans on sales to kids, are off the table because they would hurt the bottom line. The industry has successfully framed the debate as nanny state versus freedom. Don't let the government take your burger is a powerful slogan. But the reality is, don't let the corporation poison your children. 7. The poverty of choice. One of the most heartbreaking sections of the book is the discussion of food deserts, or food swamps. For millions of people, eating real food is not a choice. It is a logistical impossibility. If you live in a poor neighborhood, you might not have a supermarket. You have a gas station and a dollar store. The only food available is UPF. It is cheap, shelf-stable, and filling. Fresh vegetables are expensive, rot quickly, and require time and equipment to cook, which you might not have if you're working 2 jobs. Van Tulleken argues that telling poor people to cook from scratch is an insult. It ignores the structural violence of the food system. UPF is the food of poverty. It is the ration pack of the working poor. The industry argues they are feeding the world by providing cheap calories. Van Tulleken counters that they are mining the poor for profit while sticking the public with the healthcare bill. 8. The end of the experiment. We are nearing the end of Van Tulleken's 30-day UPF binge. He is in bad shape. His MRI results come back. The connectivity in his brain has changed. The reward centers are effectively hardwired to the habit centers. He has created new neural pathways that scream for junk food. His blood work shows increased inflammatory markers. His hunger hormones are out of whack. He has gained 6 kilograms, about 13 pounds, in 4 weeks. But the most disturbing part is the psychological addiction. He tries to stop, and he panics. He finds himself hiding food. He feels shame. This is the reality of the modern diet. It is a state of physiological dependence induced by a commercial product. He realizes that the freedom to eat whatever we want is an illusion. We are not free. We are addicts living in a dealer's paradise. 9. The Big Tobacco Playbook. The comparison is inevitable. Van Tulleken explicitly draws the line. Big food is the new big tobacco. The strategies are identical because the players are often the same. In the 1980s, tobacco giants like Philip Morris bought food companies, Kraft, General Foods. They brought their marketing executives, their lobbyists, and their scientists with them. They applied the cigarette model to food. 1. Addiction. Engineer the product to be habit-forming. 2. Denial. Fund junk science to create doubt about the health risks. 3. Personal responsibility. Frame the problem as a lack of willpower in the user. 4. Marketing to kids. Get them young. Joe Camel becomes Tony the Tiger. Van Tulleken uncovers internal documents showing how they optimize salt, sugar, and fat to hit the bliss point, just as they optimized nicotine delivery. They knew exactly what they were doing. The difference is that you can live without cigarettes. You cannot live without food. This makes big food much more dangerous and much harder to regulate. They have embedded themselves into the very biological necessity of survival. 5. The illusion of choice in the supermarket. Walk into a supermarket. You see 40,000 products. You think, wow, so much variety. Look closer. It's an illusion. Van Tulleken breaks it down. 80% of those products are owned by a handful of transnational corporations: Nestle, PepsiCo, Unilever, Kraft Heinz, Mars, Danone. And 90% of those products are made from the same 4 crops: corn, soy, wheat, and palm oil. Whether it's a pizza, a donut, or a chicken nugget, it's just a rearrangement of those 4 cheap commodities, plus chemicals. The variety is in the flavoring and the packaging, not the food. This monoculture is terrifying. It makes the global food system incredibly fragile. A disease in the corn crop or a war in a palm oil producing region could collapse the calorie supply for billions. We have traded resilience for efficiency. 6. The clean label scam. Consumers are getting smarter. They are checking labels. They don't want monosodium glutamate or high fructose corn syrup. So the industry pivots to clean label. Instead of MSG, they use yeast extract or hydrolyzed vegetable protein. It's the same molecule, glutamate, just with a friendlier name. Instead of high fructose corn syrup, they use fruit juice concentrate or agave nectar. It's still sugar syrup. Instead of artificial colors, they use beetroot powder. Van Tulleken warns that clean label UPF is still UPF. It still lacks the matrix. It is still soft, energy-dense, and hyper-palatable. A bag of organic, non-GMO, gluten-free veggie chips made with sea salt and beet powder is still a bag of rapidly absorbable starch that will spike your insulin and leave you hungry. Do not be fooled by the health washing. If it's in a bag and melts in your mouth, it's the enemy. 7. The environmental apocalypse. We touched on this, but Chapter 17 goes deep. The environmental cost of UPF is not a side effect. It is a central feature. To make UPF cheap, you need industrial agriculture. You need massive monocultures of soy and corn. This requires deforestation. Hello, Amazon rainforest. Massive pesticide use, killing the bees, and synthetic fertilizers, polluting the oceans. Then you take those crops and process them. This uses massive amounts of energy and water. Then you wrap them in plastic. Then you ship them around the world. Van Tulleken argues that you cannot care about climate change and eat UPF. They are incompatible. A diet high in UPF is a diet high in carbon emissions. Interestingly, he notes that industrial meat is bad, but industrial vegan UPF is not the savior. The most sustainable diet is local, seasonal, whole foods, plants and animals included. Replacing a cow with a factory farm soy burger is swapping one ecological disaster for another. 8. What the hell do we do? Policy edition. Van Tulleken is a realist. He knows we can't just ban UPF tomorrow. Billions rely on it for survival. But he proposes a tobacco control approach for food. 9. Labeling. Put big black warning labels on UPF. This food is ultra-processed and linked to obesity and cancer. No more cartoon characters. No more health claims. 10. Taxes. Tax the hell out of UPF. Use the money to subsidize fruit and vegetables. Make the healthy stuff the cheap stuff. 11. Marketing bans. Ban all advertising of UPF. No TV ads, no billboards, no sponsored Instagram posts. Especially not to kids. 12. Institutional reform. Kick UPF out of schools and hospitals. It is insane that we feed sick people the very food that made them sick. These policies work. We proved it with tobacco. We proved it with sugary drinks in some countries, like Chile and Mexico. The only thing stopping us is political will and corporate lobbying. 13. What the hell do we do? Personal edition. So, what about you? The reader. Van Tuliken's advice is surprisingly gentle. He doesn't tell you to go on a diet. He tells you to eat real food. His definition of real food is simple. Is this an ingredient or is it a product? Butter is an ingredient. Margarine is a product. Fish is an ingredient. Fish finger is a product. Potato is an ingredient. Pringle is a product. He suggests a rule of thumb: don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. He acknowledges this is hard. It takes time to cook. It takes money. It takes skill. But he emphasizes the addiction model. If you treat UPF as an addictive substance, you realize that moderation might not work. For some people, complete abstinence is easier than having just one. He encourages you to start by reading the label. If you see an ingredient you don't understand, put it back. If you see a health claim, high protein, put it back. Real food doesn't brag. An apple doesn't have gluten-free stamped on it. 7. The final verdict on the experiment. The book ends with Van Tuliken finishing his experiment and weaning himself off UPF. It's brutal. He has withdrawal symptoms, he is irritable, but slowly his taste buds return. An apple starts to taste sweet again. A carrot has flavor. The brain fog lifts. The weight starts to fall off, slowly. He reflects on his daughter, Lyra. He realizes that he cannot protect her completely. She lives in a UPF world. But he can teach her. He can show her how to cook. He can explain to her that the companies are trying to trick her. He frames it as an act of rebellion. Cooking is a revolutionary act. Eating whole food is a middle finger to the system. 8. Author's main theses. This section synthesizes the core arguments of the entire book into a coherent philosophy. Thesis 1. It's the processing, not the nutrients. The obsession with fat, sugar, and salt is a red herring. The physical structure of food, the matrix, dictates how the body processes energy. UPF destroys the matrix, rendering the food predigested and bypassing the body's satiety mechanisms. This leads to unconscious overconsumption. Thesis 2. UPF is an addictive substance. UPF is engineered to hack the brain's reward systems using combinations of fat, sugar, sodium, and texture that do not exist in nature. It overrides the stop signals from the gut, creating a cycle of craving and consumption that mimics drug addiction. Thesis 3. The industry is predatory. Food corporations are not in the business of feeding people. They are in the business of generating shareholder value. They use the same tactics as big tobacco, marketing to children, funding biased research, and lobbying against regulation to protect their profits at the expense of public health. Thesis 4. Obesity is a commercial disease. The obesity epidemic is not a failure of personal willpower. It is a normal physiological response to an abnormal food environment. We are not lazy. We are poisoned. The solution lies in changing the environment, not shaming the individual. Thesis 5. Eating is an ecological and political act. The UPF system is destroying the planet through monocultures, plastic pollution, and carbon emissions. Rejecting UPF is necessary not just for personal health, but for the survival of the biosphere. It is a reclaiming of autonomy from a system that views humans as extraction points for money. 1. The illusion of willpower in a chemical war. Let's revisit the most insidious lie of the modern age: just have some self-control. Van Tuliken dismantles this with the precision of a surgeon. He explains that willpower is a cognitive function housed in the prefrontal cortex. It's great for short-term tasks like holding your tongue in a meeting or deciding to save money. But eating is driven by the hypothalamus and the brainstem, ancient lizard brain structures that care about survival. When these structures sense a famine or a blood sugar crash, they scream "eat" at a volume that drowns out the prefrontal cortex. UPF is designed to create a constant state of physiological famine in the midst of plenty. Because it lacks nutrients and spikes insulin, shuttling energy into fat cells instantly, your blood sugar crashes soon after eating. Your lizard brain thinks you are starving. So, when you reach for the second donut, it is not a failure of you, the cortex. It is the success of your survival instinct reacting to a false signal. The industry knows this. They engineer the food to trigger the famine response. Telling someone to use willpower against UPF is like telling someone to use willpower to lower their heart rate while being chased by a tiger. It's the wrong tool for the job. 2. The health halo of fortification. We need to hammer this point again because it is the primary defense of the cereal industry. But we add iron and B12. Van Tulleken exposes the reductionist flaw here. Nutrition science spent 100 years discovering vitamins. We found out that a lack of vitamin C causes scurvy. Great. So we assumed that if we just added vitamin C to everything, we'd be healthy. But biology is complex. A synthetic vitamin sprayed onto a cornflake behaves differently than a vitamin bound in the matrix of an orange. We don't fully understand the synergy of whole foods, the thousands of phytochemicals, fibers, and enzymes that work together. By fortifying junk, we create franca-food that prevents acute deficiency. You won't get scurvy, but drives chronic disease. You will get diabetes. It keeps you alive enough to keep buying, but sick enough to need medication. It is the perfect business model for the pharmaceutical food industrial complex. 3. The marketing of fun. Why is kids' food neon blue? Why does it pop fizz and change color? Van Tulleken discusses the weaponization of fun. The industry knows that kids have no concept of long-term health. They operate on immediate gratification and novelty. So they turn eating into entertainment. Yogurt in a tube, cereal that turns the milk green, candy that explodes in your mouth. This does two things. 1, it creates a brand imprint. The kid associates the brand with joy and excitement. 2, it dissociates food from hunger. You don't eat the yogurt tube because you are hungry. You eat it because it's a toy. This destroys the child's intuitive eating mechanism. They stop listening to their tummy and start listening to the marketing. They learn that food is for fun, not for fuel. This mindset persists into adulthood, where we treat ourselves with food to regulate our emotions. Number 3, the gluten-free trap. Van Tulleken takes a swing at the free-from aisle. He notes that for the 1% of the population with celiac disease, gluten-free is a medical necessity. For everyone else, it's often a trap. Gluten is a protein that gives bread structure. To make bread without it, you have to use a ton of additives: xanthan gum, hydroxypropylmethylcellulose, tapioca starch, rice flour. The result, gluten-free bread is often more processed, has less fiber, and has a higher glycemic index than regular white bread. But because it says gluten-free, people think it's healthy. They eat more of it. They gain weight. They feel worse. So they think, I must still be eating something bad. And they restrict their diet even further, buying even more expensive processed health foods. It's a cycle of orthorexia fueled by industrial formulations. 4. The loneliness of the UPF eater. Eating used to be a communal act. We sat around a table. We shared a loaf of bread. We talked. UPF is designed for isolation. It is dashboard dining. It is eating a burrito in your car while driving to work. It is eating a pot noodle at your desk while answering emails. Van Tulleken argues that this atomization of eating is part of the problem. When we eat alone, distracted by screens, we eat faster and more mindlessly. We don't get the social satiety of sharing a meal. The industry loves this. They want you to snack individually, constantly, grazing, rather than eat meals collectively. Snackification is a massive growth strategy. If they can convince you that you need a mid-morning bar and an afternoon boost, they double their eating occasions. The decline of the family meal correlates perfectly with the rise of obesity. It's not just what we are eating, it's how we are eating. 5. The economic coercion of the Global South. Let's go back to the global impact. Van Tulleken describes how trade deals force developing nations to accept Western UPF. If a country tries to ban junk food or put warning labels on it, the big corporations sue them through the World Trade Organization. They claim it's a barrier to trade. He cites the example of Mexico. When Mexico tried to tax sugary drinks, the industry fought back with everything they had. They used intimidation, bribery, and astroturfing, creating fake grassroots consumer groups. This is corporate imperialism. Sovereignty is eroded. A country cannot even decide what its own citizens eat because a company in Switzerland or the USA says it hurts their quarterly earnings. The result is that the poorest countries with the weakest healthcare systems are being hit with the hardest wave of chronic disease. It is a humanitarian crisis in slow motion. 6. The microbiome, the extinction event within. We are living through a mass extinction event. Not just the polar bears, the bacteria in your gut. Van Tulleken explains that the human microbiome is shrinking. People in the US have about 30% less diversity in their gut bacteria than people in the Amazon. Why? Because we are starving them. Our gut bugs eat fiber, macromolecules from plants. UPF has no fiber. When you starve your good bacteria, they die. The bad bacteria, the ones that love sugar and inflammation, take over. Or worse, the starving bacteria start eating you, eating the mucus lining of your gut. This loss of diversity is permanent. You can't just take a probiotic and fix it. Once a species is gone, it's gone. We are passing this depleted microbiome to our children through birth and breastfeeding. We are literally eroding the biological foundation of our species from the inside out. 7. The reformulation lie. The industry's favorite solution is reformulation. We will reduce salt by 10% over 5 years. Van Tulleken calls this a stalling tactic. Reducing salt in a chicken nugget doesn't make it a vegetable. It makes it a slightly less salty nugget of industrial slurry. Reformulation maintains the status quo. It keeps the UPF business model intact. It prevents real change, like shifting to whole foods. In fact, reformulation often makes things worse. If they take out fat, they add sugar. If they take out sugar, they add sweeteners. If they take out salt, they add flavor enhancers. It's a game of whack-a-mole, where the mole is always profit. Van Tulleken demands we stop asking for better UPF and start asking for less UPF. 9. The pester power. Children are the most effective lobbyists in the world. The industry knows this. They market to kids, not just so the kid buys the candy, but so the kid pesters the parent. Mom, can I have it? Mom, please, mom. Parents are tired. They are overworked. Eventually, they break. Fine, take it. The industry exploits parental exhaustion. They turn children into weaponized, nagging machines. They undermine parental authority. Van Tulleken argues this is ethically monstrous. It interferes with the parent-child relationship. It pits the child's chemically engineered desire against the parent's protective instinct. 10. The call to action. Revolt. The book builds to a crescendo of anger. Van Tulleken wants you to be mad. He wants you to look at that cereal box and see a lie. He wants you to look at the ingredients list and see a chemistry experiment. He wants you to look at the corporation and see a predator. He believes that change will only come when the public sees the matrix. When we stop seeing UPF as food and start seeing it as an edible food-like substance designed for extraction. He calls for a grassroots movement. Cook, grow a tomato, support local farmers, refuse to buy the garbage. It is a David versus Goliath fight. But as he reminds us, Goliath has a weakness. He needs us to feed him our money. If we stop buying, the giant starves. 1. The additive safety mirage. Let's talk about the word safe. The FDA says additives are generally recognized as safe, RAS. You hear that and think, oh, cool. Scientists tested this for 20 years and proved it won't hurt me. Wrong. Van Tulleken exposes the GRAS loophole. It essentially allows companies to self-certify their own chemicals. A company hires a scientist on their payroll to look at some data, often generated by the company, and say, yeah, it looks fine. They send a summary to the FDA. The FDA files it. Done. There is no rigorous long-term independent testing for chronic effects. They test for acute toxicity, i.e., does it kill a rat in 24 hours? They do not test for, does this emulsifier cause low-grade inflammation that leads to depression over 30 years? We are the test subjects. The entire population is participating in a massive, uncontrolled toxicology experiment, and the results are coming in. We are sick. Van Tulleken argues that the burden of proof should be reversed. Companies should have to prove safety, long-term, before putting a chemical in our food, rather than the public having to prove harm decades later to get it banned. 2. The plant-based deception. The industry is pivoting hard to plant-based. It sounds great. Plants are good, right? Van Tulleken warns that plant-based UPF is the new frontier of deception. He examines the Impossible Burger and similar products. While the environmental intent might be noble, the nutritional reality is bleak. To make a pea taste like a cow, you have to ultra-process the hell out of it. You need protein isolates, modified starches, excessive sodium, and synthesized heme, leg hemoglobin. He quotes nutritionists who worry that we are replacing bad meat, which at least has a matrix and bioavailable nutrients, with worse sludge. The danger is that people think they can eat unlimited amounts of plant-based nuggets because they are virtuous. But metabolic pathways don't care about virtue. They care about molecules. A hyper-processed starch bomb is a bomb, whether it came from a potato or a pig. 3. The personalized nutrition scam. The next big thing is personalized nutrition. Apps that tell you exactly what to eat based on your DNA or microbiome. Van Tulleken is skeptical. He sees this as another layer of industry obfuscation. It complicates something that should be simple. You don't need a $300 DNA test to tell you not to eat a Twinkie. You don't need a microbiome swab to tell you that vegetables are good. The industry loves this complexity because it keeps you dependent on their solutions. It turns eating into a biohacking engineering project rather than a natural human activity. It also distracts from the main problem, the food environment. If you have the perfect diet plan on your phone, but you live in a food desert surrounded by fried chicken shops, the app is useless. 4. The nanny state defense. Every time someone suggests regulating UPF, the libertarians scream, nanny state. Van Tulleken flips this argument. He asks, who is the nanny right now? Is it the government? No. The government is absent. The nanny is the corporation. The corporation tells you what to eat through billions in ads. The corporation decides what is available in your store. The corporation manipulates your taste buds. The corporation sets the price. We are not free. We are being babysat by a psychopath who feeds us candy to keep us quiet. Regulation, like banning ads or taxing sugar, is not restricting freedom. It is restoring freedom. It is curbing the power of the corporate nanny so that you can actually make a choice that isn't coerced by chemical engineering and psychological warfare. 5. The cost of living crisis. Van Tulleken addresses the elephant in the room, inflation. When food prices go up, people switch to UPF. It is the calories of last resort. He argues that this is a political choice. We choose to subsidize corn and soy, the building blocks of UPF. We could choose to subsidize broccoli and lentils. We could make fresh food free for the poorest. We could mandate that schools serve real meals. The fact that eating healthy is a luxury is an indictment of our economic system. It means health is a class privilege. The rich get to be thin and live long. The poor get to be obese and die young. This is not an accident. It is a feature of a system that values cheap calories over human life. 6. The snack is a modern invention. Did you know that snacking wasn't really a thing 50 years ago? You ate 3 meals. If you were hungry in between, you waited. The industry invented the 4th meal. They invented 11ses. They invented movie snacks. Van Tulleken explains that this constant grazing keeps our insulin levels permanently elevated. We never enter the fasted state, where the body burns fat and cleans up cellular debris, autophagy. We are in a permanent state of fed. Our metabolic machinery never gets a break. This leads to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. The solution is radical but simple. Stop snacking. Eat meals. Let your body rest. 7. The food is love. Lie marketing often equates food with love. Show them you care with brand X. Van Tulleken argues this is toxic. It teaches us to use food as a proxy for emotion. It teaches parents that giving a child junk food is an act of affection. He suggests we need to decouple treating from poisoning. You can love your kid without giving them a substance that damages their liver. You can celebrate a birthday without a sugar coma. We need to reclaim the language of love from the advertisers. Cooking a meal from scratch, spending time, effort, and care, that is love. Handing over a plastic-wrapped bar is just a transaction. 8. The moderation trap. Everything in moderation. It sounds so reasonable. Van Tulleken says this is the most dangerous phrase in nutrition. 1. It is undefined. What is moderation for a substance designed to be addictive? Is 1 cigarette a day moderation? 2. It is subjective. Everyone thinks they eat in moderation, even the person eating 3,000 calories of junk. 3. It plays into the industry's hands. It puts the blame on you. We provided the food, you just failed to moderate. For many people, abstinence from UPF is easier than moderation. Once you start, the biohacks kick in and you can't stop. He suggests we should treat UPF like alcohol. Fine for a treat occasionally, maybe, but acknowledge it is a toxin, not a food group. You don't aim for moderate alcohol consumption as a health goal. You accept the risk for the pleasure. We should view soda the same way. 4. The knowledge paradox. Here is the frustrating part. Knowing this doesn't always help. Van Tulleken admits that even as an expert, even while writing the book, he still craves the junk. This proves the power of the lizard brain. Intellectual knowledge, cortex, cannot easily override biological drive, hypothalamus. This is why education campaigns fail. You can tell people smoking kills or soda causes diabetes, but if the chemical hook is deep enough, they will do it anyway. This is why we need structural change. We need to change the environment so that the healthy choice is the easy choice, not the hard one. 10. The hope in the horror. Despite the doom and gloom, Van Tulleken is optimistic. Why? Because the science is finally catching up. The NOVA classification is going mainstream. Doctors are waking up. The public is waking up. He believes we are at a tipping point. Just like with tobacco, there was a moment where the tide turned. The lies stopped working. The lawsuits started winning. The regulations passed. We are at the beginning of the end of the UPF era. It will be a long fight, but the truth is out. The emperor has no clothes, or rather, the burger has no food. 1. The dysfunctional hospital. Van Tulleken takes us inside the very place that should be the sanctuary of health, the hospital. He describes the irony of treating a patient for type 2 diabetes or heart disease and then feeding them UPF in the hospital canteen. The vending machines in the waiting room are stocked with the exact substances that caused the diseases being treated in the wards. This is institutional cognitive dissonance. Hospitals have outsourced their catering to massive service corporations like Sodexo or Compass Group. These companies operate on the same model as Big Food, profit maximization through cheap ingredients. So the healthy hospital meal is often a microwavable tray of processed sludge. Van Tulleken argues that hospitals should be UPF-free zones. They should lead by example. Feeding a sick person UPF is like giving a lung cancer patient a cigarette in the recovery room. It is medical malpractice normalized by economics. 2. The weight stigma, double bind. The book navigates the tricky waters of fat shaming. Van Tulleken is adamant. Stigma is a driver of obesity. When you shame someone for their weight, you stress them out. Stress releases cortisol. Cortisol drives hunger and fat storage. The person seeks comfort. In our environment, comfort is sold in a wrapper. They eat. They gain weight. You shame them more. It is a vicious cycle. The industry loves stigma. Why? Because as long as we blame the individual, lazy, greedy, we don't blame the product. By reframing obesity as a commercial disease caused by exposure to a toxic environment, we remove the stigma. We shift the blame to the perpetrator, the corporation. This empowers the victim, the eater. You aren't weak for getting addicted to a drug designed to addict you. You are a normal biological organism reacting to a supernormal stimulus. 3. The orthorexia risk. Van Tulleken is careful to warn against the opposite extreme, obsession. He knows that books like his can trigger anxiety. People start fearing every crumb. They develop orthorexia nervosa, a pathological obsession with clean eating. He reiterates, a little bit of UPF won't kill you. The human body is resilient. The problem is the dose. He advises a good enough approach. Don't aim for 100% purity. It's impossible in the modern world unless you move to a cabin in the woods. Aim for 80-20, or even 60-40. Just being aware is 90% of the battle. Once you see the matrix, you naturally start to pull away from it. You don't need to be a monk, just be a skeptic. 4. The big food defense strategy. Van Tulleken outlines the specific tactics the industry uses to deflect regulation. It's a playbook called the Playbook of Delay. 5. Complicate the science. Fund studies that show mixed results. Create confusion. Is it the sugar, or the lack of exercise, or the video games? As long as there is doubt, there is no regulation. 6. Focus on physical activity. Coca-Cola spent millions sponsoring the Olympics, and exercise is medicine. The message, drink our sugar water, just run it off, which we know is impossible. 7. Emphasize individual choice. We just offer choices. The consumer decides. This ignores the fact that they manipulate the choice architecture to make the unhealthy option the default. 8. Self-regulation. We promise to be good. We will voluntarily limit ads to kids. They set their own targets, which are laughably low, and then pat themselves on the back for meeting them. 9. Lobbying. Bribe politicians legally to kill bills. Recognizing these tactics is crucial for citizens. When you hear a politician say, we prefer voluntary agreements with industry, Translate that to, I have been bought. 10. The social contagion of eating. We eat what our friends eat. Van Tuliken discusses the social nature of diet. If your social circle eats fast food, you will likely eat fast food. It's a social contagion. But this works both ways. If you start cooking, if you start bringing real food to the potluck, you become a vector for good habits. He encourages readers to be that vector, not by preaching, nobody likes a vegan missionary, but by doing. Cook delicious real food. Share it. Let the taste do the convincing. When people realize that real food actually tastes better than the flavor-blasted chemical dust, they switch. The pleasure of UPF is fleeting. The pleasure of real food is deep. 6. The time argument. I don't have time to cook. Van Tuliken acknowledges this is the biggest barrier. We are time poor, but he challenges us to audit our time. We spend hours scrolling Instagram, often looking at food porn. We spend hours watching Netflix. He argues that we have deprioritized cooking. We view it as a chore to be minimized rather than a fundamental act of self-care. He suggests batch cooking. Make a giant pot of lentil stew on Sunday. Freeze it. That's your convenience food for the week. It takes 30 minutes of active work. He also points out that UPF isn't actually that fast. Waiting in the drive-through line takes time. Feeling like garbage and having brain fog costs you time and productivity. Being sick costs you years of your life. Real food takes time, but it gives you time back in the form of energy and longevity. 7. The cost argument revisited. Real food is expensive. Yes and no. If you try to replicate a UPF diet with organic artisanal versions, e.g. organic frozen pizza, it is expensive. But if you switch to a peasant diet, beans, lentils, rice, potatoes, seasonal veg, cheap cuts of meat, it is often cheaper than UPF. A bag of dried lentils costs pennies and feeds a family. A bag of Doritos costs $5 and feeds nobody, nutritionally. The problem is that we have lost the skills to cook these cheap ingredients. We don't know how to make lentils taste good. We have been de-skilled by the industry so that we are dependent on their pre-made sauces. Relearning these skills is an economic survival strategy. Rate, the taste bud rehab. Van Tuliken describes the phenomenon of neuroadaptation. When you quit salt and sugar, your food tastes bland for about 2 weeks. This is the withdrawal phase. But then, a miracle happens. Your taste buds regenerate. They become more sensitive. Suddenly, a strawberry tastes insanely sweet. Plain bread tastes complex. You start to taste the chemical aftertaste in the junk you used to love. He promises the reader the craving does go away. You are not doomed to want Oreos forever. You just have to break the chemical feedback loop for long enough to reset your baseline. 9. The final warning. As the book nears its conclusion, Van Tuliken issues a stark warning. If we do nothing, the future is bleak. We are looking at a world where 50%, 60%, 80% of the population is obese and diabetic. Healthcare systems will collapse. Life expectancy will plummet. We are the first generation in history to be sicker than our parents. This is not a drill. It is a slow-motion catastrophe fueled by greed. He implores us not to look away, to stay angry, to stay vigilant. 10. The transition to the end. Van Tuliken prepares to sign off. He has given us the data. He has given us the history. He has given us the biology. He has stripped the shiny wrapper off the modern food system and shown us the rotting machinery underneath. Now, the ball is in our court. He leaves us with the image of the arms race. The industry will keep evolving. They will invent new chemicals. AI-designed flavors are coming. They will invent new marketing tricks. But we have an advantage they don't. We are alive. We have bodies that want to be healthy. We have an evolutionary heritage that connects us to the earth. They have money. We have nature. If we align ourselves with our biology, if we return to the first age of eating, or at least the second age, we can win. We can step out of the arms race. We can just eat. 1. Conclusion of the experiment. Chris Van Tuliken wraps up his month-long journey into the heart of darkness. He steps off the scale. The damage is done, but the lesson is learned. He hasn't just gained weight. He has gained a profound, visceral understanding of the enemy. He describes the relief of returning to real food not as a diet, but as a liberation. The brain fog clears. The bloating subsides. The compulsion to constantly graze evaporates. He realizes that the freedom the industry sells, the freedom to eat anything, anytime, is actually a cage. True freedom is the ability to stop. True freedom is having a body that speaks to you in a language you can understand, not one garbled by static interference from industrial chemicals. He emphasizes that this isn't about purity, it's about sovereignty. It's about taking back control of your biology from a boardroom in Switzerland or Illinois. 2. Author's main theses. Here, we crystallize the entire argument of the book into 5 pillars of truth. This is the ammunition you need to take into the world. Thesis 1. The definition of food has changed. Van Tulleken most radical assertion is that UPF is not food. It is an industrial formulation of edible substances. Real food is a complex matrix of nutrients, fiber, and information that evolved alongside us. UPF is a deconstructed and reassembled commodity designed for shelf life and palatability, not health. By calling it food, we legitimize it. We must start calling it what it is, an edible product. Thesis 2. The addiction model is valid. Obesity is not a behavioral failure. It is a substance abuse disorder. UPF activates the same dopaminergic pathways as nicotine and alcohol. It overrides the homeostatic mechanisms, satiety, with hedonic mechanisms, reward. The industry engineers this bliss point deliberately. Therefore, the solution isn't willpower. It is regulation and abstinence avoidance, just as we treat other addictive substances. Thesis 3. The nutrient focus is a trap. Nutrition science has failed us by focusing on reductionism nutrients rather than holism food processing. This allowed the industry to game the system by reformulating junk to meet nutrient targets, low fat, high protein, while keeping the ultra-processing intact. Health comes from the food matrix, not the sum of its chemical parts. Thesis 4. Inequality is the driver. The UPF crisis is a symptom of economic violence. The poorest people are forced to eat the worst food because it is the only food they can afford or access. Subsidies for commodity crops, corn, soy, and the lack of regulation on externalities make UPF artificially cheap. Solving obesity requires solving poverty and fixing the rigged food economy. Thesis 5. Silence is complicity. The medical and scientific communities have been bought or silenced. By accepting funding from big food, researchers and institutions have compromised their integrity. We need a firewall between public health policy and corporate profit. Until we kick the industry out of the room, we will never have effective guidelines. 3. Final call to arms. Van Tulleken ends not with a whimper, but with a roar. He challenges the reader to become a food citizen. This means more than just shopping at the farmer's market. It means demanding change. Demand truth. Read labels. Reject the marketing lies. Demand access. Fight for real food in schools and hospitals. Demand protection. Support bans on advertising to children. He reminds us that we have done this before. We fought big tobacco and won, mostly. We fought laden petrol and won. We fought asbestos and won. Big food is bigger, yes, but they are terrified of one thing, information. They rely on your ignorance. They rely on you thinking that natural flavoring is natural. They rely on you thinking that you are just lazy. This book is the antidote to that ignorance. You now know how the sausage and the nugget and the crisp is made. You know the trick. Once you see the trick, the magic stops working. The next time you walk down the supermarket aisle, you won't see colorful boxes of joy. You will see a wall of addictive, extracting, polluting substances. And you will keep walking. You will head to the produce section. You will buy a potato. You will go home. You will cook it. And in that simple act, you will strike a blow for your health, your planet, and your freedom. 4. Epilogue, the Eat This and Die summary. Listen, your body is a biological machine that evolved over millions of years to run on things that grow in dirt or have a heartbeat. But for the last 50 years, you've been fueling it with edible products invented by dudes in lab coats whose only goal is to make their quarterly bonus. This isn't food. It's industrial waste that's been bleached, deodorized, and flavored with chemicals to trick your lizard brain into thinking it's a strawberry. It's ultra-processed food, UPF. Here's the hard truth. You aren't fat because you're weak. You aren't fat because you skipped the gym. You're fat because you are literally addicted to a substance that is engineered to hack your brain's stop button. These companies, Nestle, Pepsi, Kraft, they aren't feeding you. They are mining you. They figured out that if they pre-chew the food for you, destroying the fiber matrix, you will eat it twice as fast and never feel full. They figured out that if they blast your tongue with the perfect ratio of salt, sugar, and fat, you will keep eating until you hate yourself. And they don't care. They will sell you the poison and then sell you the diet version of the poison to fix the problem they caused. Stop playing their game. Stop counting calories like a nerd. It doesn't work because a calorie of broccoli is not the same as a calorie of Doritos. One feeds you, the other drugs you. Here is the fix. 1. Read the damn label. If it has an ingredient you don't have in your kitchen, emulsifiers, gums, isolates, put it back. It's trash. 2. Cook. Yeah, it takes time. So does dying of diabetes. Choose your hard. 3. Quit the moderation BS. You don't do heroin in moderation. If this stuff makes you lose control, cut it out. The system is rigged against you. The government is bought. The healthy aisle is a lie. The only person coming to save you is you. So stop eating stuff that comes in a box with a cartoon character on it. Eat real food, let your body heal, and tell the food giants to go to hell. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.